Svalbard, a pristine environment, 24 hours of sunshine a day in summer and complete darkness in winter. This island group in the Arctic is one of the northernmost places inhabited by humans in the world. The small town of Longyearbyen on the main island of Spitzbergen is the center of Svalbard and even has a university. Students from different countries come here to study science subjects with a focus on the Arctic. Most of them come for 1 or 2 semesters in order to experience the biggest adventure of student lives. Among them are Claire and Simon from Hamburg.
My challenges are the cold temperatures and the remote location. In Hamburg, you're right in the midst of things, whereas here, there's nothing.
I love Hamburg and I like living there, but I wanted to see something different. I grew up in the countryside, but I've never lived in such an isolated location with so few people.
UNIS, the University Centre in Longyearbyen, is the most northerly higher education facility in the world. Claire and Simon are learning in their socks here because they have to take their shoes off in the university. That's a rule because the weather's often wet and foul so close to the North Pole. The Arctic adventure began for 21-year-old Claire and 23-year-old Simon 2 weeks ago. The meteorology students will spend 4 months at the end of the world, but in an incredibly modern university.
Just bounce these from today.
When Claire and Simon found out about the opportunity of studying in Svalbard from fellow students in Hamburg, they were both very excited. The Arctic has always fascinated these two weather fans. Where better to learn more about the specific weather conditions of the Arctic in order to maybe go on and specialize in Arctic meteorology?
The chance of living here and experiencing life in the Arctic with all of its difficulties was just too great and unique.
I have courses here that I couldn't get in Hamburg. I can do Arctic meteorology and polar oceanography, and these areas just aren't dealt with in Hamburg as part of the regular course. So this is a great opportunity. Of course, I had to come here to learn something about this exciting area.
Life on Svalbard can be dangerous too. There aren't many places on Earth where people are so exposed to the forces of nature. The archipelago is just 1,000 kilometers from the geographical North Pole and only inhabitable because a current of the Gulf Stream brings relatively warm water up this way. Otherwise, Spitzbergen would be surrounded by pack ice almost all year round, and temperatures of -20, common during the winter time, would be the norm. Unpredictable changes in the weather need to be anticipated when going on an excursion. The biggest threat is being attacked by a polar bear. Help can be a long time in coming. For that reason, Claire and Simon have to take a lesson in safety before they start their semester. This course is obligatory for all new students here. The students learn what they have to do when a fellow student becomes unconscious in freezing temperatures or when there's only one camping mat available to stabilize a broken leg.
My break. Yeah. Oops.
Obviously, I hope I won't need any of this, but it's good to learn it because we're outside a lot here and something can happen very quickly.
Today we will try the survival suits.
Another thing the new students get taught is how to use a survival suit. In the freezing cold water of the Arctic Ocean, anyone who falls in will die within minutes. But the survival suit increases that time to 2 hours. Those who can't handle a firearm are in trouble in the event of a polar bear attack. Part of the safety course is training at the university's own firing range. Being able to handle a rifle is a must for anyone who wants to leave the town. Claire and Simon have to learn this skill too.
It's a clear shot, a good shot, because the vital organs now is exposed towards the shooter. Find the shoulder, the leg, and a bit behind the shoulder and leg. That's the aiming point.
Whatever Martin says goes. He knows the wilderness better than anyone. His goal is to make sure no student ever gets injured by a polar bear. He approaches shooting practice with great discipline.
And then keep your eye on what's happening.
This is the first time that Claire has ever handled a firearm.
Perfect. As soon as you're ready, 4 rounds, fire!
The danger of a polar bear attack is low in autumn, but Claire and Simon will spend half of the winter on Spitzbergen. That's a riskier time when polar bears can come on land via icebergs.
If we see a polar bear, then we leave the area immediately. So we keep distance between us and the polar bear. And yeah, if the polar bear is heading in another direction and we are heading in another direction, then problem is solved. But the problem is that if the polar bear is following us, then maybe you end up in a situation where you have to scare off the bear, or even worse, you have to fight back. Yeah. Inside the area where you hit the white organ, so that's good shooting. Yeah. Okay.
Should be dead.
Yeah, that should be dead. That's good shooting.
Ich finde es sehr verstörend.
I think it's quite disturbing to hold a rifle. I also think it's strange that anyone's allowed to shoot here after just a 2-hour training session. I understand that it's necessary because of the polar bears, but I hope I won't need it.
Claire and Simon meet Max at the shooting range. Coincidentally, Max is also from Hamburg, but he's studying environmental technology. He too wants to spend half a year in Svalbard.
In deinen Lectures, worum geht's da?
Max is learning about glacier behavior, a very interesting topic, Claire thinks.
Okay, das klingt sehr interessant.
After the safety training, it's time for Claire and Simon to go on an excursion. The starting point for these is always the UNIS Logistics Department, which stores everything needed for research in the Arctic. Technical instruments and survival equipment for dangerous expeditions. Simon, Claire and their fellow students will perform measurements for weather data on Spitzbergen today. Now it'll become clear what the students learned during their safety training. Teamwork is the most important thing in order to work safely in the wild environment of the Arctic.
We're going to a few measuring stations to check the temperature and the humidity.
Temperatur und Feuchte in der Luft.
The students are checking the weather conditions in different locations around Longyearbyen. The data are meticulously collected and evaluated in order to make more and more precise weather forecasts. Then they head out into the wilderness, past measuring stations that are researching the atmosphere, the northern lights and the ozone layer. The Arctic is one of the least explored areas on Earth, and that's also true for the work of the meteorologists, who are currently trying to determine the wind speed, wind direction and ground temperature. They're always at risk of being attacked by a hungry polar bear. That's why the team leader is carrying a rifle, packed in an orange cover, safe from the elements.
Yeah. So it's 6.5 for the wet temperature.
The Arctic is very special, and you don't get the impacts of cities like you do in Germany. This is remote wilderness without human influence, so you can really study weather very well.
There are so few measurements done in the Arctic so far that all the weather and climate models have problems with dealing with what goes on in the Arctic. And the only way we can improve these things is to get more measurements and try to figure out the special things that are going on.
Back at the university, the aspiring meteorologists enter the data they collected into the computer. A long expedition day is coming to an end. Scientists have been researching on Svalbard since the 18th century. The expedition of 1838 left these interesting drawings. The scientists discovered Russian Orthodox crosses on the islands. They'd been left by Pomors, a hunting people from northern Russia. They'd probably been using Svalbard as a hunting ground since the 16th century. They're believed to have been the first settlers on the islands. The hard work of getting to Svalbard and doing research here in 1838 has become easier. The island group is conveniently accessible by plane all year round. The airport is the lifeline of the people here because in wintertime fresh food supplies can only be brought in by air. There are 2,000 people in the small town of Longyearbyen, which is only 100 years old. The name goes back to a miner called Longyear. The coal mine is still the biggest employer here. Almost all of the inhabitants are here because of the work, and they're only here on a temporary basis. Nobody has been buried in the cemetery since 1950. The old and sick return to the Norwegian mainland. Claire, Simon and Max like their new temporary home. Although every day is much like the previous one, they have all they need. But many things are different here from what they are in Germany.
There are loads of bicycles here and none of them are locked because nobody would steal them. You'd always find them again from the person who stole them. We unfortunately don't have a bike. We can borrow one if we're lucky.
There aren't many bicycles for hire here at the end of the world, and so the students are forced to walk.
This is both Longyearbyen's post office and its bank. I have to pick up a registered letter from the university. The signs are on every shop and public building because you're not allowed in with guns. Many people run around with them because of the polar bears, but you can't take a gun into a bank, so you have to leave it outside. This is a second-hand shop run by students, where we get everything other students have left behind for free.
Norway is expensive. This is how the students help each other. But the second-hand shop also exists for another good reason.
Just looking for some English books.
Yeah, they're all mixed.
Okay.
But there should be some of them. Yeah, the idea was more or less for recycling clothes and all that. Because there was a lot of waste outside the houses. There wasn't like any of recycling. Because it's really expensive to bring these things to the inland and recycle them.
The only supermarket here sells almost everything the people need for day-to-day living. Nevertheless, the students have to think hard about what to buy because a lot of the food is more expensive here than on the mainland. Bargains sell out quickly.
You have to wait for things like this for a couple of weeks. It's the cheapest crisp bread.
Fruit and vegetables are particularly expensive.
These products have almost expired. That's why they're cheaper. This is always the first place I look.
Alcohol is cheaper than on the mainland. Spitzbergen is a tax-free zone. But here too, Max has to really think about what he buys.
The problem is you can't buy as much alcohol as you like. That's why we get this big card. That tells you how much alcohol you've got left for the month. Schnapps, wine, and beer are dealt with separately. This is for beer. I think you can get 24 half-liter bottles. That should be enough.
This card system dates back to the old mining days. The miners weren't allowed to drink that much because the work underground was dangerous. They weren't allowed to be drunk. That's why alcohol consumption was strictly monitored and limited.
Evidence of the past is also kept in the town. The remains of a closed-down coal mine, a crashed German plane from the Second World War. Everything that dates back to before 1946 is protected by law. Even if it's scrap, it mustn't be removed. The dry Arctic climate means the weathering process takes a long time. Charred wooden stakes are a reminder that Longyearbyen burned to the ground in World War II. To this day, all of the buildings have to be built on stilts. They would otherwise sink over time in the permafrost. That's also why the pipes lie above ground.
It's all very raw and basic. It has to withstand the winters.
It's all very practical because that's the only way here. It's so expensive to get building materials, but I think they've still done a nice job.
It's a 3-kilometer walk from town to the student hostel for Max, Claire and Simon. In wind and weather, even now in September, it's freezing. 13 huts can accommodate 250 students. They've got 10 square meters of privacy each. All of their possessions and memories of home had to fit into a single suitcase.
You can see that I don't have much room, but it's enough because I'm out a lot. I sleep here and I've got room to work. I'm not here a lot, but when I am, it's cozy.
This is the first time that I've lived in student accommodation. It's like everywhere else. It takes a bit of time to get to meet people. At first you know their names and say hello. Then you get to know each other better and you become a small family.
Dann wird man irgendwann auch zu einer kleinen Familie.
We all try to bring something of our culture to show the others how we do it.
It's mutton with cabbage for dinner, a typically Norwegian dish. But today the Norwegian students are letting the Germans cook. Will they do a good job?
We only sit there drinking.
We eat it in Norway in the autumn because that's when we kill the sheep. Earlier, when people didn't have that much money, this was what they had and that was what they used.
The cabbage and meat are cooked in a pot with salt and pepper. How did the Germans do?
Yeah, sometimes we have meat.
Maybe a little bit different from usual, but
it was the first try.
Yeah, it's the first try. So
your first time. Yeah. Oh, hello! Can you?
But what do the Germans think?
It's quite nice. It's simple, but good.
Aber schmeckt eigentlich ganz gut.
I don't know why Norwegians don't like this. I think they made a great effort and we should really applaud them.
Science on Svalbard is the story of myths, heroes and dramas. Because the islands are so close to the North Pole and because they're easily accessible by sea,